we are on the topic of desires. And it is a big topic in the Gita. It probably makes up the entire Yoga Shastra, 2 sections, right? Brahma Vidya, self-knowledge. But anything other than self-knowledge, more or less in some way, directly or indirectly, is speaking about management of the mind. And management of the mind is really just management of desires, because desires is the driving force that makes us choose our decisions, and decisions then affect the quality of our lives. So naturally, everything about when it comes to mind management is really just desire management. And the whole discussion is, what's the quality of those desires, and can I make them, a little bit kind of refined? And so the whole topic of the Gita is really just about this desire management. So knowing that, let's just spend one more session looking at this desire, because if you and I can master desires, you've really mastered basically 99% of all development, right? Self-growth and decision-making and all of that. So Krishna starts out with a very profound statement, and he starts by saying that it is nitya vairina, which is it's a constant enemy. Now, it's a loaded statement, and so he has to start by making this profound statement, through which we then have to look, what do you mean by constant enemy? And the thing about desire is, if you, for a moment, tune into your own lifestyle and how you choose, and you'll recognize that desire is actually a bigger enemy than ignorance. What do I mean by this? Well, to remove something that is not true, it's only a matter of pointing it out. Just throw some light and done, right? The word girl, as I said before, in Latin is puella, puella. Once I tell you that girl in Latin is puella, that's it. Ignorance is gone. So it's very easy. I just throw some knowledge that is opposed to ignorance, and ignorance is gone. But the thing with desire is, despite knowing something, despite having the knowledge of what's the right etiquette and the right means of conduct, desire still fights back. It pushes you still to act against what you now know what is to be done. So it has a form of still holding you down, making you do contrary to what you know. It's aggressive, whereas ignorance tends to be passive. So now you say, well, this desire, if I look at it, I can see in my own life, this is your own life, that it tends to lock you into a possibility, doesn't it? For example, the only possibility that is possible is to maintain my income, says the business owner, at, say, $30,000 a month, right? Or let's say 15,000 a month. And he has or she has to maintain that. And you say, why? I don't know why. And even if they know rationally that I don't need so much monthly income, I don't need, so much finances in my bank account, I can live off for many, many more years, right? I could put into some investments. But then you ask them, why can you not help yourself? No, I don't know. I just have to maintain a certain figure of money. So they know rationally that they don't need so much, and their family will be just fine with the, with the money that he can bring, even if it's less, but he has to maintain it at a certain figure. So now it's the same thing with your own life. It's like this, I have to, I don't know why, I just have to be in a certain way. And you're like, why? There's so many other possibilities. And you're like, I don't know why. I mean, I kind of intellectually know that there's so many other options, but I just have to always go shopping on a Monday. Why can't you do it on a Tuesday? I always have to take the first aisle, and I always, when I walk in the shop, I have to go to the left. Why don't you go on the right for the first time? I don't know. Or, I always have to sort of, see, even like the teaching can become a form of binding. Like I have to, follow the rules or dharma down to the last letter, like Yudhishthira, right? So he turns this whole thing that is dynamic and flexible. You can either go to the left or the right. He turns it into this giant, this big kind of a I have to mode. So in this sense, these desires limit your options, And you end up missing out on other types of knowledges because there are so many knowledges. In fact, isn't it, if you look in your own experience, true that what your heart desires is the kind of knowledge that you will pursue? So there are 5 kinds of knowledges. They can help you in 5 different ways, but my heart desires one of them. And there's 4 more waiting. And so I say, it doesn't matter. My heart desires this. So what does this mean? Desire keeps the individual locked to a certain possibility, and they end up missing life. And if you look into this, it's not really useful, because what you really want is expansion from multiple fronts. You want kind of this dynamism and flexibility in your ways of perceiving the world. Nobody wants rigidity. Nobody wants just one pointedness, one singularity, and there's all these other options. Because isn't reality made of nuances? Isn't reality made of possibilities? Isn't reality different perspectives? So now if my desire is forcing me to look at one possibility, I have to. It has to be this way. My son has to go to university. You know, they have to get married. Hey, not getting married is also an option. Not going to university is also an option. There are many who went to university or who didn't go to university and they became extremely successful. You know, I have to go, whatever, running or playing a sport or doing this, or I have to doing this for 5 days a week. Why don't you do it for 4 days a week? I don't know. I have to do it for 5 days a week, right? And so it kind of like it puts you in this mode of have to, but the reality is you don't have to. Okay. So one more thing about desire is that if your heart, whatever it desires, your knowledge will always follow that. Your knowledge follows what your heart desires. Then is true objectivity possible? Objectivity means dispassion. That means a relative amount of distance to look at things and ask the question, what is this talking about? What is this talking about? What is this talking? Is that possible if you are deeply entrenched in one possibility alone? One political party, one teaching system, one perspective, one possibility. That is why we have intelligent people who are using their brilliant intellects and are unable to come out of supporting something that makes no true sense, that is not truly complete. You see this all over the news and media and possibilities. Like, you're so intelligent, you've got the scientific mind and an analytical mind, and you're just kind of in one mode, unable to see there are different possibilities, unable to consider different options. It's like, why? Reason is because the binding desire is holding me down. It's heavy. It's like pulling me down, and it doesn't allow you to look into different directions. So now this begs the question, what's the relationship between desire and ignorance?
For me, well, I just think ignorance, you wouldn't know, like, if there would be a consequence. But desire, like, I could desire blah, blah, blah. But if I go with that desire, I would know there could be a consequence or a negative consequence
Right. Okay.
fulfilling that desire. But ignorance, I
Right.
don't think you would know.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. Okay. Good observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carrie was next.
Very often in the scriptures, I see 2 words, raga dvesha, likes and dislikes. And I think of Stoicism again, where they always advise you to not give way to likes and dislikes, to not get in that mindset. I'm not sure it exactly answers your question about ignorance, though.
It answers half of it, and in fact, it does mention it describes what these desires, specifically binding desires, are, which is these insistent, rigid likes and dislikes. So it's a good half of the answer. And by the way, while we're on the topic, then that begs the question, then what is the right relationship towards desires? It cannot be that desires are, harmful, because in fact, even love, I could say, just like Krishna says, desires are to be, in fact, he says, managed, right? He doesn't say managed explicitly, but he says more like, right, removed, right? Or kind of diminished. I can say the same thing about love, because love too, something so beautiful, can become toxic. So like love, anything or desire can become toxic or unhelpful if it's mismanaged. So in other words, when he says manage your desires, he's not saying remove desires. He's saying desires are only damaging under certain conditions. And what are those conditions? If they don't enhance your life, if they don't, in the name of samanya dharma, if they don't bring fairness, if they don't bring self-evolution, if they don't keep making you go forward in life, in that sense, desires become bad, right? As they say. So anything in life, you can say to anything, even moksha, you can say is bad. Because if now moksha overpowers my discernment and I just start to look at everyone else as just near mithya, irrelevant people, irrelevant souls, lost souls, in that case, moksha becomes exactly the same what Krishna says, they're a constant enemy. So even moksha becomes a constant enemy if it's mismanaged. So like this, desires or anything can either serve you or it can become a constant enemy. Going back to the question, what's the relationship between desires and ignorance? Ashish, you got something?
Yes, Andre. So I was just thinking, so the stronger the desire for certain things, then you will have more subjective your own values to it, which means you are further away from the actual objective value of it, which is equivalent to like you're ignorant of the objective value.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. The stronger that urge, that pressure that this has to happen, the more it's most likely saying I'm stuck in my own world, my own
Yes.
biases. Yeah, very good point.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this, but it was similar to what Ashish was saying, because when you were saying before with, you once you've been told something, then ignorance should be removed because you're now knowledgeable about it. But in the case of desires, those desires then seem to completely override and that knowledge and bring ignorance back almost, especially when you're thinking about, or as an example, like something like an object, like the latest car or something. You can convince yourself that the object in itself only has a certain value to it, but you then convince yourself of that, and then all of a sudden your desire comes back and overrides that again. And also I'd add that in the circumstances where desires keep arising and overriding things, there must be a gap, or the gap between the understanding that you are full and complete is still not solidified, it's not entrenched. There's still a gap there. So that's how ignorance keeps and desires keep playing off against each other.
In my mind, it is ignorance precedes desire. Ignorance leads to desire. Desire leads to karma. Karma leads to karma phal. That leads to rebirth, and that whole cycle continues. And that cycle can stop only when the ignorance is removed, when you realize that you are the consciousness, you are the true self. So ignorance is the basic cause of everything that is happening in this world.
So could you say that then desire is the bodyguard of ignorance?
Yes, a desire, I agree with your statement. Yes, Desire is the bodyguard of ignorance.
In other words, ignorance hides behind desire, and
Absolutely.
I don't know what I don't know. And why is that? Because in front, there is desire that's actually making me pursue anything other than fixing the real problem.
Very well put. That's, I agree with you.
So in other words, what is it that keeps the person entrenched in not knowing? The answer is desire.
It's desire.
That is why he says it's a constant enemy for both the wise and the unwise. And also, I would add to that is that ignorance makes you confused, whereas desire makes one in conflict. Because ignorance, I'm confused, what's the right thing to do? But desire, despite knowing what to do, I'm in conflict because what my actions are doing are contrary to what I know to be is to be done.
Probably partly because of the kind of meditation that I've done and observing on a sort of granular sort of physical level what's going on. Desire, often seems to be a kind of idea. Okay, so you want something or you want to do something, which is accompanied by a discomfort, and that discomfort you feel is going to be relieved when you get what it is you want, right? And that's this kind of almost like an organic drive then to do whatever it is, to enact the desire. And that whole process of feeling a discomfort, probably at the subconscious level, and then feeling that you have to relieve that discomfort, that is not a lucid process. You see, that is all I'm tempted to use the word animal, but it's all like a physical mechanism, on a very low level, as it were, unless you can bring lucidity to that. I think, okay, well, here is the discomfort. It's not really harmful. If I don't do this, it doesn't matter because this discomfort is not so serious. And so then you start to have the ability to to bring lucidity to whatever you initially feel driven to do.
Yeah, and the only thing about this is, though that is true, the thing about it is it's going to keep on creating endless discomfort until the main cause of discomfort is addressed. Because you're right, even what Pankaj said is that ignorance hides behind desire. And why do I desire? Because I am not comfortable. Now, why am I not comfortable? What is that's making me uncomfortable? Because my nature is small. And as long as I'm small, I'm uncomfortable because my nature is the whole thing. And as long as it's a contradiction, then I'm not going to settle until I solve the problem permanently. So
yeah, that's the root cause. You're
that's
right.
the root
And
cause.
all the little desires are the little shoots of the root.
They just keep the mini ignorances, right? Constantly kind of, like, oh, I've solved, and now I'm a little bit bigger. Now I'm a little bit bigger. Now I'm a little bit better, but they don't really address the root cause. So on one hand, you're right, but on the other hand, we need to get to the root cause of the discomfort.
Sure.
Good point. Okay. So one more thing I want to say about desire is that why is it that despite knowing the right thing that is to be done, why does desire physically push one into doing it anyway? Why is there this force that desire has behind it, despite knowing intellectually it's not the right thing to do? And the reason is because when there is an emotion backing something up, doesn't that win over what you know? When there is an impression, emotionally charged impression, that's got emotion attached to it, doesn't that mean that despite what you know, that emotion will usually win? Whenever there's an emotion attached to something, your buddhi doesn't stand a chance most of the time. So when Krishna says the root cause is therefore binding desire, or which is a constant enemy. And desire always is linked to the emotional body, the mind. So what is then truly the constant enemy in the world? Because he said it's a constant enemy for everyone, past, present, and future. He calls it desire. But where does desire live? It's always living in the emotional body, the manas. So now what is manas? What's the emotional body? That's called emotional intelligence. So what is he really saying? The root cause that is making people do things contrary to what they know. Lack of emotional intelligence. So what's the constant enemy in modern language? Absence of emotional IQ. Absence of emotional IQ leads to mismanagement of desires. Mismanagement of desires leads to pursuing knowledge consistent with that desire. And that knowledge is just going to surround your life with as good as that desire, which is not really that profound. It's just a small thing, small petty things here and there. Anyone who's had kids, you know that driving force, that physical force that a kid engages in when they are under the spell of emotions, do you not? You can tell them the logics, you can tell them the rationale. The emotion is physically palpable and tangible, and it still dominates even adults, which is why the emotions are so important. And this is his profound revelation. What is the root cause in terms of what is to be done? Emotional management is the key.
It even says, in the Bhagavad Gita that, even the wise, the jnani, they fall to this also. And I think it does get back to knowledge, because if you really understand that you're not a small person, that you're a large person, and that there will always be desires, even the most spiritual person will have desires. I mean, we're not like some kind of zombies or something. And so you have to have the knowledge that you can't satisfy desires. You have to know that. And maybe that's just from, tripping over it so many times. And finally, you gain the knowledge that you will never be satisfied with worldly objects, worldly experiences.
Yeah.
They're not going to make you a bigger, fuller person.
Yeah, and in that sense, we don't ever kill desires, but we come to realize their true nature. What can they do for me and not do for me? So yes, very good. So yes, you're right. Experience helps, and we come to see that desire is desire. It's a wonderful tool. However, to let it just run wild, and it costs you a lot of pain later on. It's very busy. It's a busy lifestyle. Lots of finances go into it, and then you just ask yourself, into what are all my money going to? And then you go into small little things that they were kind of cool, but they didn't really make much of a difference.
Andre, so why doesn't Krishna specifically mention or allude to better the emotional intelligence instead of he's using other words?
I don't know. Maybe it's a different time. Sanskrit word usage. It doesn't kind of use the word ambiguous words like emotion. It's very specific, like desire. But in modern psychology, we do know that desire is emotions.
One of the reasons why one goes after a desire, knowing that in the past it has not really taken us anywhere, is also because we always seek happiness, right? We as humans probably we have built to always be happy. This is maybe our true nature, but we have probably got a lot of things overshadowing it. So in that pursuit of happiness, which is an emotion, probably as you mentioned, that emotion is so strong, and that is our inherent nature to really be happy. You go and satisfy your desire, thinking that is going to give me happiness.
Good, Vijay. I'll just go along with that thread. There's this common thing that we say, what we want is happiness. What if I were to challenge you now and say, that's not what you really want? You don't really want happiness. Because in Vedanta, we have something called the Anandamaya, bliss sheath. And this is something that also undergoes change. We call it Priya, Moda, Pramoda, three kinds of happinesses. And when something's maybe far away, you kind of feel a little bit happy. When it's closer, you feel more happy. And when it's one with you, you feel very happy. So in one sense, it seems like happiness from that standpoint is my ultimate nature, because that everyone is basically looking for happiness. But in Vedanta, we specifically say happiness itself is not who you are. Because if you were happiness, then you would always be happy. That would be your intrinsic nature. If happiness was your intrinsic nature, you would never have depression or sadness, because that would be who you are. If love was your intrinsic nature, then you could never experience hate. So the fact that you can be free of happiness and free of love or sadness shows you that you're neither. However, now on the other hand, to follow your thread, happiness is an excellent tool which the scriptures uses to point, and they say, when you're happy, what is going on here when there's happiness? Nothing. In the closest you can say is, in this moment of being happy, I don't want anything else. In other words, there's absence of desiring, absence of moreness in the state of happiness. So the scripture says, never mind about happiness, it's just a tool, but look behind the happiness. And it says, so what you really want is happiness, which is an emotion. But why do you want that emotion? So that I am in that place of not being desireful of anything. And why does everyone move towards that same place? Because no one wants hatred? Because my nature is free of desire, free of happiness, free of wanting, free of everything. Thus, everyone is only ever pursuing oneself. And what is the nature of that self? The one who desires nothing, because I'm already full, whole, and complete. In fact, not to desire anything proves that there is nothing to want, because I already am everything. You only desire if you think you're not something. So you want that. Okay, so happiness along with love, they're always on the same side. Love and happiness, they're two same words on the same coin. Why do you love an object? You love an object because it makes you happy. When you are happy, you love that object that's making you happy. You love the object that's making you happy because it's bringing you happiness. Why do I want thus love and happiness? Because I want to be in that place of not being desireful of anything, because that is my true nature. And that place we call Ananda, or fullness, or Ananta. That's why we say Sat Chit Ananta. That is your nature, your existence, which is the nature of awareness, aware for existence. And what kind of aware for existence? Not that there is a kind, but what's the description of that aware for existence? It is full, the one that desires nothing, because I am already everything. It's like this. Suppose at the level of the wave, okay, a lot of activity is going on. Suppose we're all waves now, okay? And we all have different unique expressions that we're moving, and some of us are taller, some of us are smaller, some of us are chubbier, some of us are thinner, some of us are more smart in some areas, less smart in other areas. Yeah, all agree? So let's shake. So now we're shaking hands, and we're just, as waves, we're shaking hands. So hello, hello wave, hello wave. Okay, cool. Now at the level of the ocean, so much activity is happening. That means all of us are not apart from each other, because we're all amidst the same ocean. So at the level of the ocean, there's a lot of change. At the level of each wave, there's a change. But water, H2O, it's totally oblivious to the action and the movement happening at the level of the ocean and the wave. H2O molecules are just chilling out, relaxing, relaxing. And where are they? They are everywhere. They're in every single wave. They're in every single tree, leaf, sky, moon, ocean, Ishvara. There is no place where the H2O is not chilling out. And it's totally oblivious to the whole thing. All it knows is H2O. But at the level of the ocean, at the level of the waves, So much activity, so many laws, and so much movement, and so much happiness, and so much joy, and so much activity, and wars are happening, and people are dying, waves are collapsing, waves are being born, right? And we're praying to the ocean. So much activity. At the level of the H2O, quiet. And that one that is quiet, where are they? They are everywhere. They're in the entire ocean. They are in the entire wave. And in that state of quiet fullness, I desire nothing. Why? Because I am everything. So every wave is nothing but the water, and every wave thus wants happiness. Why? Because behind the happiness, you get a glimpse of that fullness, that quiet fullness where I lack nothing. Going back to Carrie's statement, where she said that desires are an enemy of the wise. See, let's just look at verse 39 one last time. It uses the word here, jnaninaha. So it says, binding desires are enemy of the wise. And the wise word is jnaninaha. Now, the word wise, instantly, you're going to ask, well, what does wise refer to, right? Is it referring to an ajnani or a jnani? So I'm going to say it refers to both. How is a binding desire an enemy of the ajnani? We just saw, right? It makes you, whatever your heart desires, that's where you will go. So it takes your discriminative capacity away. It makes the person ignorant about certain realities. So this we have resolved. But then how is a desire an enemy of the jnani, the one who is enlightened? You have to pause there. What am I referring to when I say the wise? What's the nature of the wise? The nature is awareness. So can I be talking about desire is the enemy of awareness? No, because there is only one reality. There is no such thing as awareness plus desire. And so now desire is an enemy of awareness, right? A wave is an enemy of the water. Can you say that? It's a weird question. Enemy is the way of, there's only water. So you cannot say that desires are an enemy of consciousness or awareness, but what is the jnani still wearing? A body-mind. And that body-mind is still governed by prakriti, the three gunas. And that prakriti will still be subject to physical laws, subject to psychological laws, subject to physiological laws. Thereby, though the jnani fully cognitively understands, I am the whole, I am that water, relaxing, whole, full, and complete. At the level of the emotions, which is at the level of the mind, the feeling is still, I am hurt. You said something and I am hurt. I feel inadequate. I am small. All those three are at the level of awareness or the mind. Though it is true at the level of the mind, does that in any way affect awareness? No, the form never affects the substance. This pot, the level of the form, called this desire, can crumble into a million pieces. It never is going to affect the clay. The clay remains clay all throughout. Thereby, it's not like a wise person recognizes their nature and suddenly they stop smoking overnight, because that is a binding desire all their life. Or they suddenly stop speaking abrasively, which is how they, grown up to speak. Like, what happened to you overnight? You were speaking abrasively yesterday, and now you got enlightened, and now you're speaking like the greatest gentleman we've ever heard. It's not like that, because these ideas are still at the level of the mind. We had examples of Nisargadatta. He said specifically, I know that I'm smoking and this is damaging my lungs, but I'm okay with it. It's not touching me. We had Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa. He used to cry when he was away from his devotees. It's like me, just when the session ends, I go over to my sofa and I cry because I'm no longer with you. And you're like, Andre, what's wrong with you? You need to kind of gain self-knowledge. You're like, that's not an issue. The issue is I've got binding desire. And he himself confessed. He said, this is an issue. I mean, he didn't say an issue. He says, I do cry when my devotees are missing. But he then worked on it. Did that affect his self-knowledge? Not at all. That was a condition at the level of the mind. Whatever happens at the level of the mind doesn't affect me, my full nature, the water. Thereby, in that way, desires can impede upon the wise person, the jnani's happiness and relative happiness, of course, and freedom of expression in this world. I think this is encouraging so that we don't have any false ideas or carry any notions and kind of these these ideas that if I desire, I'm not wise and therefore something's wrong with me. You have to let go of this, please. This is unrealistic. I know at the beginning stages in spirituality, everyone thinks like this. It's a big thing where if you're desirous and you're still a worldly person and you still have, desire for a home, desire for holiday, desire for a wife, desire for kids, you are not wise. The only the only wise person is the one who leaves it all. They're totally desireless. This is not ever going to work or function. So it's a great relief to know it. This is how it is.
So, Andre, then because whether it's wise or unwise, for both the desire is at the level of the mind only, right? And so, if for a wise also, if you say binding desires are there, how would you then really, where is that distinction between wise and unwise then? Where is that? So why would we call him wise? What is it that he is understood more than the unwise then?
Okay, so when Krishna uses the word wise, jnaninaha, uses the word wise. So now I divided that into two angles. Wise from the standpoint of the one who's a discriminative seeker, right? They're an atikari. They're still getting to the journey. It's definitely an enemy for them, right? We've established that, right? It keeps you locked in one possibility and so on. Now, the second version is the second angle. We said it is also kind of a restriction for the absolute wise, the Jivan Mukta. How so? Well, it can still sort of, keep you a little bit feeling like you're incomplete because of those remnants. And, if you don't clean that up, then it can be a little bit of an obstruction to life experience. But even though it is an obstruction to life experience, the absolutely wise person, the Jivan Mukta, knows it really doesn't matter because it's all happening at the level of the mind. But even if you know that, if you're honest to yourself, still, it's a bonus to sort it out, isn't it? Exactly. So in that sense, it can become an enemy if it's not addressed or looked into. We had examples of this where, we had, you can just look this up online. There's many examples of wise teachers who had some kind of desires for whatever it is, woman or and then, so they kind of engage in these funny practices behind the scenes because they haven't sorted that out. So now I know you can argue and say, well, they're not wise at all. Another way to look at binding desires, if it's confusing, is habits, addictive habits. Everyone's going to have a habit, and not all habits are healthy. Yeah, so it's all at the level of the mind, Vijay. That's what I want to say.
It just strikes me that the answer to this, in a way, is the usual answer in Vedanta, which is yes and no, as it were, because it's always paradoxical, right? So, as you say, the desires arise on the level of the mind, and I suppose that the wise person can recognize the level of reality, right? Which relates to the Satyam Mithya sort of distinctions, right, that we're able to make with those concepts. And the binding desires are just a more coercive form of those desires. But it's of interest to me is that, often in Vedanta, it's said that ignorance is the main problem. And therefore knowledge is the solution, and that's what we're pursuing in Vedanta, in Advaita Vedanta. You're emphasizing now the problem of not quite the restless mind, but the desirous mind.
Yeah,
and you're really raising that to the level of the most important problem. Are you referring back to the sort of as well the way that Advaita Vedanta regards meditation, development of concentration, and so on, as preparatory. So what you're really saying is that the preparation needs to be done to an extent.
Absolutely. And amongst preparation, a generally healthy, discerning mind, a thoughtful mind, an emotionally composed mind, they're all parts of just not being so, like a little kid, chasing after things that are not really that, big end of the day. For example, when we were young, we were all kind of very much into honeymoon, right? It was the greatest thing there is. And even in a sense, honeymoon can become kind of an abstraction when you get old, because now you say, my goodness, when I had that honeymoon, my life now is like just so not pleasant compared to that honeymoon. So even a honeymoon can become an abstraction in the future. So see, now, based on that knowledge, you're not even now chasing honeymoons. Not that you have anything against them, but you just know that honeymoon is a honeymoon. It's just a fleeting thing. I can appreciate it if it comes. If it doesn't, that's wonderful. If it doesn't come, either way, it doesn't affect my nature. So all of that is required, not to kind of dismiss these things, not to deny them, not to push them under the carpet. You just need to look at them into, at a transactional level. And as I keep also saying, see, in Vedanta, we say after moksha takes place, you still have the final stage. It's called nididhyasana. And nididhyasana, as I said last week, involves meditation and continuing to listen and continuing to inquire, continuing to go through these prakriyas in your mind. You're just continuing your life path. And so even though it really doesn't matter anymore, because after the body is dropped, you are free permanently. But, right, you still have many more years to live. And in that way, you're going to certainly attend to small things that are, maybe, need some correction. So in summary, we're putting spotlight on both. Before we put a spotlight on ignorance, now we're putting a spotlight on desire.
Yeah, hi, Andre. So is it, I guess I'm a little confused still. The mind can't be free then because it's under the rules of nature? And so like it can never be free of desires? Did I get that part right?
Yes.
Okay. Then I guess then I'm a little confused going back to chapter 2, like what we covered, the concept of like a sthita prajna, like how do we reconcile what that person is to what we're saying right now?
So in chapter 2, Krishna says that a wise person is able to give up all desires arising in the mind. And this comes from, I think, 255. But he says that. So now let's reconcile it with that. What does it mean that the wise person is able to give up all desires as they arise in the mind? Does this mean they don't arise in the mind?
No, I guess they
No,
do.
because
You're
the
saying
job of the mind is to desire. The mind still got so many more impressions just constantly flowing in, and is going to keep on desiring left and right. So the wise person is able to give up desires as they arise. So what does this mean? It's an active process. You don't get a break from the mind. You don't get a break from desires. It's just that they have recognized the value of the world. The world is a lovely place, but at the same time, do I really have to chase it? No. So this automatically comes for the wise person. And by that virtue, they're able to let it go. They don't kind of succumb to, following 10,000, travels around the world, because, it's just going to be more trees, more plants, more people, more concrete, more sunshine. It's all the same. So in that sense, you become a lot more discerning, a lot more, kind of straightforward in your approach.
okay,
Right.
so at the level of the mind, then you're like, this is just going to be ongoing. It's really only, even if you realize what the truth is and you get rid of ignorance, it's after death, or like you aren't reborn again at that point. That's the true freedom. Did I get that right?
Absolutely, Sharmili. I'm very glad you brought this, because this is the most common objection for the advanced students. And you know what it is? It is that we have this idea that a wise person is perfect at the level of the body and the mind. that they are pure at the level of the body and the mind. What is absolutely pure? What's the only thing that is completely, not that it's a thing, that's completely pure?
Self.
The self is completely pure. So see what we're doing? The self is satyam. So we keep imposing satyam, purity, onto the body and the mind. Therefore, we want the body and the mind to be pure. I keep on imposing the clay. Suppose the clay is that which is pure, and I keep imposing its nature, which is purity, onto the body-mind. And so I expect my body-mind to be desireless, because that's called purity, to be completely in tune with other people's emotions, because that's purity, to be completely, forgiving, never angry, never succumbing to pressures, because that's all purity. Is that ever going to happen? No. And this, once you recognize this, the irony is this knowledge alone makes you free. That your body and mind will never be completely pure. That knowledge alone is what gives you so much relief. That it's okay to be a human being. It's okay to desire. It's okay to have these things behind closed doors that are not kind of, sometimes clean. It's okay. It's all the body and the mind. It's okay. And that's so relieving, I tell you. What I hear, unfortunately, and so does my teacher, and I get a lot of this from my teacher, is that the most common talk is that the wise person has this, this glow, this halo, this magnificent aura, this magical smile, this beautiful composure, this amazing mind, this sensational aura, this, electrifying presence. It just keeps on going. And you're just like, I can't find one single person in real life who represents this image that all these teachers keep on talking about. In fact, the only place you can find it is where? Those who have died. Which is why those who have died become the ideal idols, because I can keep on superimposing 10 million things onto them. They are embellished with all amazing minds projections. And then you compare that dead guru to those who are alive, and those who are alive have no chance. And so then you go back to the dead gurus. Now, the irony is those who are alive now, who get dismissed, when they become dead, in the future, they will be cherished as much as dead people are now cherished. This has been going on since beginningless time like this kind of mind play. So it's a great relief, I tell you, just to be okay, human being, go and do your mistakes. You don't have to get it right. You just have to keep your mind locked in to the truth and let the world run, because it's governed by Prakriti. And after all, you don't have control of your body, because this person is just a modification of this Prakriti that's just constantly, responding to the environment. It's not you.
So, Andre, would it be okay to say that for unwise, you have maximum emotional value and maybe a little bit of intellectual value for a certain object, but for wise, intellectual value is maximum, emotional value tends towards zero in mathematical terms?
I'm always wary of putting black hole whiters on personalities. It depends. We've got all forms of personalities. I would just say it depends.
Okay.
There's no definitive answer to this.
Okay, and then also to add on to Sharmili's interaction, which you're having the question, like what's the difference between wise, and we refer to chapter 2, verse 55, where desires arise, but the wise is able to manage them. So would it be okay to say, like, for a wise person, desire would still arise, and even though he doesn't pursue them, but he's still able to be relatively calm and okay and not be angry and frustrated?
That's
Like
also
happy.
that's also possible for one who doesn't know the nature of the self. We call these people professionals, therapists, psychologists. They're all like this. So even in chapter 2, when you say the word wise person is able to remain there composed and equanimous in reference to desires, that can also refer to a ajnani, So you see, this is all at the level of the mind. So it doesn't matter whether you talk at the level of the ajnani or the jnani. Desire is at the level of the mind. All that matters is just managing it. We know there are enlightened beings who haven't managed their desires so well. There are unenlightened beings who are excellent at managing their desires well, and vice versa. Okay, so now when we hear these statements, you have to also kind of look at behind the statement. It's not an absolute. There are variations. Just like there's a variation between the wise of the Krishna, he was cheerful and outgoing. There's Vyasa, he was maybe more introverted and more contemplative. There's Vidur, he's involved in politics. Just like you have variations of the wise person, you have variations of the emotional composure, intellectual composure, desire composure, and interests. So nothing is absolutely black or white at the level of mithya. The only thing that is certain is the self. That's the only principle that is unchanging and consistent. Everything else you will never be able to reconcile with an absolute, because mithya has no absolutes. If I look at your body and I speak about your body, what am I speaking of? Your nose, your ears, which thought, which eye? Am I talking about the atoms? Am I talking what am I looking at? I'm talking everything simultaneously. So everything at the level of mithya, whether it's desires, whether it's love, whether it's how the wise person is, this is always going to be varying. And if you don't know this, then there's no choice but to impute a black or white idea. It's got to be like this, end of story. But that is a very limited way to think.
In modern philosophy, there is a term called hedonistic trap. That means the human being is constantly under the pressure of getting happiness after getting something, deriving hedonistic pleasure. Once a person gets that thing, that the pleasure is not as much as he thought he would get. So he's always running after happiness and never gets it. And getting out of the hedonistic trap is the person what a wise person has to do.
Yeah, I mean, now everyone has to get out of that for sure. But I wouldn't really say that one who is a wise in the Bhagavad Gita terms, I wouldn't say they are under the, necessarily the trap of hedonism, because hedonism will keep you kind of trapped with anything other than philosophy in most cases. So in that case, we need to get ourselves slowly out. But see, that's everyone's journey.
Yes.
Hey, going with that thought, look at this. Once upon a time, you closed your eyes and you fell asleep and you began to dream. And you thought, I can do anything in this dream. I can make this dream however I want. And so you decided the first thing, you said, I'm going to engage in hedonism. I'm going to have maximum pleasure as possible because I can make this dream whatever I want. And so you live that out. You close your eyes for a mere 5 minutes, but your own power made it so that the dream lasted 80 years. So you had 80 years of all the pleasures in the world. And then you woke up and you thought about it. And you thought to yourself, well, that was that, but I've got to dream again. What will I dream this time? And so you thought about it. And you said, I kind of lived out through hedonism. It was what it was. I want something else now. I want to be a king in the next dream, a queen. And so you close your eyes for 8 hours, but the dream only lasted for 5 minutes. And so you were a king for 5 minutes and a queen. People prostrated to you. You had all the power in the world and all of the goods were yours. The land was yours and it was wonderful. And then you woke up and you thought about it and said, I was a king and I was a queen and I had it all. I had hedonism too. But I guess I'm going to dream again. What will I want next time? And then you close your eyes and the life that you're living now is the life that you asked for in the last time. You said to yourself, how do I want to dream? You're dreaming that now. this life. You already went through hedonism. You already went through the king and queen. Each life you selected what you want to dream. And the life that you're dreaming now is the life that you have selected. And in this life, you said, you know, I've gone through all of these things and they haven't brought me what I really want. I still want more. And I've been through this game for far too long. And so I really want something that puts an end to all of this. I want to be in a place where I ask no more for more things, but I have it all. And so you close your eyes, and as you opened your eyes, you found yourself wearing this body that you are wearing now. And he said, I also want to find a teacher who's going to bring me to that final end. And so you did. And the life you're living now is the very life that you chose. Through your own experience, through many countless lifetimes, here you are. And everyone, you realize, has to go through the same journey. So nobody gets a break. Everyone has to come to that final end. And that final end is not always pleasant. It is not always fun, but it is nevertheless your nature. And you cannot help it. You will not settle until you stop dreaming. And so the next verse, 40, talks about how do you get caught up in this dream? And you get caught up in 3 ways. Verse 40, Indriyani mano buddhihi asya dhishtanam uchyate etairvimohayat yeshaha jnanam avritya dehinam.
Its location is said to be the senses, mind, and intellect. With these, it deludes the person by covering his wisdom.
So it does delude. How so? Through 3 kinds of inputs. So you stay in this dream through 3 ways. And the first is through senses. And the senses, your 5 organs of action, they are, and perception specifically, they are innocently open and they are just designed to hear. They cannot kind of just not hear the sound. Even if you're in the presence of a bad conversation, your ear cannot noise cancel that conversation. Wouldn't that be cool? Noise canceling things automatically, that would be cool, but we don't have that ability. So they innocently input whatever is coming towards them. And in that sense, if they're exposed to things that drain you, well, they drain you. If you're exposed to, or you expose them to things that energize you, in that case, they energize you. So you have to, be discerning. What is it that, energizes me? What uplifts me? And are they, what foods uplift me? What places uplift me? What teachings uplift me? All of those things that you're exposed to, right? You have the chance to say yes or no to them. And what Krishna says here is that the senses impact you the most. It all comes at the level of the senses. For instance, food, delicious. You take look at this. You take some sweet, imagine some sweet that you like, or I don't know if you like sweet or salty, put it on the tongue. How long is that sensually pleasing for? 1 minute, right? As it's mushing in the mouth, mixed with the saliva and all that explosion of sensations, 1 minute. And then it's in your system for how long? 5 hours. So this means I've gotten 1 minute of pleasure, of sensation, and now followed by 5 hours of heaviness. Now, what the verse says here is that if you come to recognize this is how the senses are, you give 1 minute of YouTube or news or this or that, 1 minute, 1 innocent minute, it stays in your system for 5 hours. So now we, have many ways to, help ourselves. We can say simply no. We can come together in groups. For example, the power of satsangs or, these groups together like Alcoholics Anonymous. Why do you think they are there in the first place? Because on your own, your senses are exposed to alcohol and it's very hard to stop. So when you find groups, there's a power, there's a group power that everyone holds each one accountable and you're able to stop like this. So this is why weekly meetups like this or any kind of meetups that you have, are extremely powerful. And I always saw the power myself in, I remember this one time in my young 20s when, right, I was kind of this man of self effort, like I'm going to do it on my own. Can you relate to this? I'm going to figure it out on my own. I don't need anyone. And I remember that feeling when I suddenly felt that I've got all the knowledge in the world available to me, but I've reached a plateau. I couldn't go any further. And this was kind of this realization that you say, I need to contact somebody. I need to be in a group. I need a teacher, because despite all of the availability, that's the irony, despite all of the AI and this and that, there's this group power that helps you significantly. So he says, senses, therefore, are, what moves you in these favorable or unfavorable places. Now, how do you manage this? Right? If your senses keep on moving you towards different things. I'm not going to answer this because last week I said you have to figure out how on your own. What is your method? We've got many methods, like reviewing the cost. What's the cost of going after this every time? Just one-time review is enough to reduce its impact. You figure it out on your own. And the question now is, what do you do when your senses are exposed, but you can't move from that place? You got no choice but to stay. To the yapping, to the whatever it is, you go to a party and you thought you're going to have, just one person coming, and that one person brings 5 other people. And now your ears have to be exposed to 5 random conversations, 5 different personalities. What do? The senses are just in it. They can't just reduce this person to nothingness. The next part, therefore, is mastery of the mind. That's the next gateway. So in this case, you got 2 options. Suppose at a party and there are 5 people. Now, what do we often do? We create binaries, don't we? Option 1, I stay and I suffer, because generally you don't want to speak about 5 random conversations. Option 2, you go and it's all good, right? This is how we are. What if you could create options in between? What if for a moment you say, if I stay and suffer, I'm not doing myself a favor and I'm not being fully present with these people. If I go and I'm kind of, walking away with this, I know what I want, I'm a man of composure, I don't have to stay. If I do that, I'll feel a little bit guilty because with all this knowledge, I had to escape. What kind of a person am I, right? So now you can say something like, well, what are the in-between options? You tell me. You got 5 yappers in front.
Yeah, I would say you could stay for a little while and then leave.
Migrate towards a least annoying yapper.
Okay.
You might also be able to recognize that if the yapping is unpleasant, it's creating an emotion in you, which is, dislike or whatever, and you can recognize the level of reality of the emotion. It's just an emotion.
And let me add to that. What about not even choosing to see it as yapping, but getting curious?
That's a bridge too far. No, that's
Why even see it as yapping, right?
Yeah.
If you want to just change the conversation, just change it, just say, well, what was one happy thing that happened to each person, and so everybody has to, they'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
a happy thing, and then they'll start thinking about it, and so it'll just change the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Redirection.
I have people that constantly yap all day, and they yap the same story again and again, and they don't realize they're saying it again. So, and in these moments, I can feel my frustration, but then I feel empathy that they don't even remember they've said this to me already. So this feeling of empathy comes in where I just listen because I know that they're not remembering that they've already said it to me.
Mm.
It's like a sense of comfort for them to be able to say it.
Right. Okay.
To me. So I just allow myself to be the sounding board so that they can get it off their chest, even if they've said it 5 times.
This is amazing, actually, what Lorena says. So she doesn't, leave or stay. She's just managing her own psychology in that moment. And that's called realignment to Ishvara's program.
And I realize it's important for them to get it off their chest. So it must be irritating for them. So they just need someone like me to listen. That's all.
Yeah.
They don't want me to solve any problems or anything. Just listen and just acknowledgement.
If you have a parent with dementia, you face that situation immediately. And you're, okay, I can't treat this speech like I treat normal speech. You know, they don't recognize me. They're talking, they're repeating things, saying things which are not real. But you realize you have to deal with it differently. You have to listen
and as you have to, you realize that I need to become more adaptive, more dynamic to the situation. Otherwise, I'm the one who's in the wrong now, who's restricting them from communicating.
Exactly.
So it becomes your own work now. So in that sense, Lorena's work becomes her karma yoga. So that's a brilliant example how to convert frustration or something that you just cannot quite put away. It's not possible. And convert that through your own mind, through your own options, into your own spiritual practice. It's brilliant. Yes, Carrie.
Lorena has a really good point. And I tell you, about 2 years ago, I wish I hadn't been having a bad day. And I had a member of my family that kept repeating a story over and over and over. And finally, I just, it was a bad day. And I said, you just told me that same story for about 3 hours a week ago. And I've heard it. And I started, and that person hates me, will not speak to me, wants nothing to do with me. And it has just disrupted my entire family.
Right.
So yeah, don't make that mistake.
Right. Oh.
Follow Lorena's lead on that.
Kerry, it's amazing. Some of the things with dementia, because I've got people surrounding me with dementia, all different personalities, of course, and they always hold on and remember the things that hurt more than just normal things that they're talking about. They always seem to remember that bit that hurt them.
I wish I'd been able to hear that in the back of my mind before my mouth started yapping.
Sometimes when you create options for yourself, you'll be realized how quickly others accept you. They just have to see you try a little bit. I'll give you an example how a woman got accepted the moment she used her mind. So a woman got married and she was a professional dancer. So naturally, when she had a family, her time was consumed with family time. But she started to feel this desire for doing her talent, which is dance. So she had two choices initially. And the first one was I either dance and I neglect my family needs, or two, I stay and do my duties with the family, but then I restrict myself, my love for dancing. So that's two binaries, right, that we create initially. And she said, what's the third option? And she thought about it and she said, well, let me just go for, because initially it was just 5 days. She has to go 5 days. Let me go for one evening. That's about an hour. And so she went for one evening. The family had no issue with it. She came back and the family now saw her so happy, right? So next week she went for another evening and family started to recognize she really needed this. And they said, hey, go ahead. We encourage you to go two evenings. And now the family, once they saw her exercise first, her third option, the family saw that and gave her permission to and encouraged her, go ahead, have some time because we see the positive impact that this is having on you. So sometimes until we try a third option or fourth option or whatever, we hold these images about those who are close to us and we say, they will never accept me, They'll either say you don't go or go, right? But until you choose a third option, you'll be surprised how that changes the response from other people too. And they start to now accept you, but that took your try first. So you had to first think a little bit. Until then, we have these images, how they will never accept me, they will never say yes, and we act according to those images. And so how now behavior becomes inconsistent with how the person really is.
You're right. I mean, really, like art is my desire. I've been a desire all my life, ever since I can remember. From 9 years old, I've been painting. So when I had the kids, when they were very young, I had no time, work full time, looking after the kids, running around. But I made time like after I put the kids to sleep, about 9 o'clock. I would sit there until 11, 12 o'clock painting and doing things. So then I realized there's always something you can manage. You know, it's easier to say, yeah, I don't have time, you know, I'm too tired, or I want to do this, but because of my family, I can't do it. There's a way to do it. It's hard, but there is a way. There's a will.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Annie. So you deliberately made time. You said that if I don't do something now, it's probably never going to happen. It will just I'll be more entrenched in family time and less interested in my real desire for painting or something. So sometimes we just have to kind of force ourselves and say, I'm going to do it. First, the senses, that's the first input of control. The second is the mind. And third, now once the mind has made up an option, you can now evaluate through the buddhi, that's the third input. And the buddhi can evaluate what's the most appropriate response. And instead of saying yes or no, you say, you go ahead based on what is fair for both parties. So you look at your own needs, look at the needs of the whole, and try to work something out. Without the mastery of these three, the senses, the mind, and the buddhi, then desire management becomes kind of very difficult, and it leads you into poor decision making. So the question here, let's leave with this. At what level do I need to manage my desires? Where's the easiest level to manage them? You got three options. At the
From
level
the emotions?
Good. At the level of the emotions, excellent. At the level of what my eyes are exposed to. If there's an eating problem, they say the first thing, just get rid of those foods. Don't even let them be seen on your shelves. Or at a level, if you're cognitively oriented, then you can kind of rationalize and say, the real value of this is not for me. It's going to lead me to, as a consequence, the losses are huge. So whatever is your language and where you relate to, that is your means of managing desires. Again, Krishna is not saying you should, he's just offering you options. And he wants to remind us in the next verse, 41, where's the easiest place to create the life that you want? And he's just going to say what we just said now, which is at the level of the senses. Verse 41, Tasmat tvam indriyan yadau niyamya bharatarshabha papmanam prajahi hyenam jnana vijnana nashanam.
Therefore, Arjuna, the foremost in the clan of Bharata, controlling the senses at the outset, destroy indeed this sinner, the destroyer of knowledge and wisdom.
Papma. Papma means desire is a sinner and a criminal. What does a sinner and a criminal do? Well, they generally commit theft. Now, when they commit theft, they take your hand back or something, then you can get that back, right? It's no big issue. I mean, it's a little bit of an emotional trauma, but generally you can restore your belongings. However, when karma robs you, does that rob your physical objects? No. What does that rob you from? Wisdom, discriminative inquiry, your honor, maturity. And that's much bigger. And that took how many years to accumulate? Whole lifetime. An object you acquire in 1 year, wisdom, discriminative inquiry, honor, that takes a whole lifetime to develop. So in this way, it also destroys jnana, knowledge of what is right and wrong. It also destroys or reduces vijnana, deeper understanding of realities. So at all fronts, it becomes your worst criminal. And as we said, the easiest way is to cut them, according to the verse, is at the first place that they arise. And where's the first place? Not the buddhi, not the mind, the senses. So at the level of the senses are exposed to the environment. So where's the first level of control in reference to senses or desire management? The environment. The environment becomes crucial for desire management. Environment that you surround yourself with, what you hear and see on a daily basis, that becomes the driving dictator of saying no to desires. And as you say no one time, then no next time becomes easier. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.